Welcome, everybody, to the Infamous Storyteller broadcast. Today, you are joined by Joe and
Hi.
Brandon,
Hi.
and of course, me. We will be covering Chapter 13, The Reluctant Pupil. There are 2,150 words in this chapter.
Are we done yet?
Yeah, are we done yet? we
That's
really
not
need.
till the end.
We really need to figure something else out. But anyway, yeah, we're just here for the next chapter or two. I don't know how far we'll get, but we'll at least do one chapter. We'll probably do two. And yeah,
Sorry,
that's
I'm
it. I don't
zooming
know. We might put in an ad here or something if for some reason by now we're super popular and people.
Read Shadow Legends!
No. Well,
You're not a sellout.
for the right price.
Not for them. I'd rather.
I don't think I can. I don't particularly agree with their models.
Chapter 13. I'm scrolling with all my might.
You could go to the navigate.
No.
You could pull up navigation and
Too smart.
I have
How
the
dare you
navigation
insult
bar
him.
just
Oh my
open.
gosh, it's right there.
Everyone can
Man.
see it.
Man, do I feel stupid.
They can read all the chapter headings,
Right. Water.
which I
Sponsored
don't
by
think that there's any.
Nature. My watch.
No, that's a bracelet.
Your timepiece.
My time bracelet. For time. Chapter 13. The Reluctant Pupil. It would have said, like, that chapter heading sounds really nice for me because it's not even a spoiler. Behind the scenes note, the book might have been called The Reluctant Necromancer. So
It still might be. I might change it.
still might be.
We might be calling it
Okay,
Moonless through
editor,
this whole
switch
thing.
it back to Moonless if he actually does it,
Yeah,
and then that
I was
won't make
gonna
any
ask,
sense.
what is moonless? Why is it called moonless?
So it's really dumb.
Haven't you figured it out yet?
It's actually, we have revealed it in the book. So in the planet
You only
they're
reference
on,
it like once.
I reference it twice. So it's not actually moon, like the planet they're on. It appears that it doesn't to not have a moon because the moon is black instead of white.
So you can
So
see
you
it
see
during
it
the
you see it
daytime.
better during the day than you do at night.
Huh.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not to be much of a killjoy, but this is relevant.
Kill the joy.
Normally, when you have a book title, the book title's name has some implication of importance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the real reason is it was a Twilight spinoff at the beginning.
What? That Oh, I don't know if I love it or hate it more. I'm intrigued.
Breaking
wish I
Dawn,
could-
Twilight. What are the other ones?
Breaking
Uh,
Bad,
New
Nightlight.
Moon and
New
Eclipse.
Moon. Yeah, exactly. So Moonless is the obvious next book she'll write. I'd better get this out before then.
You should really, yeah, that would be awkward.
Yeah,
because
it makes
if-
it makes absolutely no sense. So
It
it
makes
needs
sense
a better name, but Moonless is what I've been calling it for the past 2 years. Year
it's
and a
a
half
shout
that I've
out
been
to the
writing it.
second book that hasn't been written yet,
Or third book. I don't know what
or third book.
happens.
The moon happens. There's a.
It's
moon
not a
happening
great
event.
name.
Yeah.
It's
Leave in the comments below what you think the name should be, even though by that point we've already picked
we've
it,
settled
it's
it,
too
and
late.
it's on Amazon probably by now.
You know, no, I'm not even going to touch that one.
I could call it Super Anime. How do they do those? Like the really long titles.
Let's see.
Boy
I wanted to
gets-
be a rancher, but I got transported to the world by an angel who really doesn't know what she's doing, so that I could fix her mistakes. And I'm a necromancer.
And I hate it.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
There's
I
your
hate it.
title.
yeah.
Are we done yet?
Hence the reluctant
The Reluctant
necromancer,
Necromancer.
which might be what we actually call it. I do prefer that. What do you think, Brandon? Reluctant necromancer or Moonless?
Moonlit. So one syllable feels pretty, or one word.
The
Not-
Antimancer.
Seems it comes off easier. The reluctant necromancer definitely has a an anime vibe
Yeah, it
to
does.
it.
It does.
It does. And if
But it kind of
became an
fits the book
anime,
too, so I'm not sure. The book is kind of quirky like an anime, so it kind of fits. Well, I guess you can decide that once we're done if you think it fits or not. But I feel like it fits. But I like Moonless because I just like the name, and it's what I titled the document um, at the
Those
beginning.
many
So
moons ago.
yeah, it's a lot back when my neck wasn't so broken.
You've
And
been working on it since then?
yeah, yeah. So I decided to do a sprint. I wrote most of this in 3 months. Rough draft, got most of it done in 3 months, and then my neck broke. Um,
Yeah.
which, if people are interested, I can tell that story some other time. But we all
we'll
know
do a whole episode on it.
we
Heck
could.
yeah.
It's a nightmare. But my neck broke, and then then for the next year and a half, um, well, no, I did 3 months, got most of it written. Then the next 3 months, my neck was breaking, and I got just about the whole thing written. And then as I was in the hospital, and I mean I couldn't do anything else. I was editing and working on the book, but it was really slow, and my head was really foggy because my head didn't work because of my neck, so it was really slow. But my plan was to get the whole book done in 6 months. But now it's 2 years because my neck broke. So there you go.
Likely story, Mr. Fixed Neck.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not like I'm wearing a brace right now or anything. So anyone can fake that. Anyone can buy a brace online.
True. Anyone can make clickbait icons like that. Please
My
use that as the
neck
thumbnail
broke.
for this episode. You won't believe what happens in chapter 13, question mark, exclamation point.
Yeah. So there's that. So for those of you who are interested, I might edit this part out and put it at the end, but who
Or put it
knows?
in a short.
It would make a good short.
That's a decent short.
Yeah.
Okay,
It
chapter
was probably
13.
like
We're
3
getting
minutes.
into it.
Okay,
So
yeah.
far
Yeah,
into
yeah.
it.
We
Chapter
digress.
Go for it, Joe.
13. Okay. Clarence woke up on a very old and dusty couch. The room was dark, lit only by a single candle sitting on a side table. Clarence sat up stiffly. Bookshelves filled the walls around him, and they turn in were filled with
intern.
Oh, it was written rightly. My brain was just reading it all wrong. They in
I'm
turn
used to
were
reading it
filled with
wrong.
I'm used to having to correct it in my brain. They in turn were filled with dusty manuscripts. About time. No, he's the same voice. About time. Need to work on that. Clarence looked behind him, looking for the source of the voice, and found the sock man standing in a kitchen of sorts, just off the study Clarence was in. The man was thin, his skeletal frame draped in the graceful folds of what Clarence assumed was once a white dress shirt. His dress pants, dark blue, were slightly too short for him, and though they were in better condition than the shirt, they were dotted with moth holes. He deftly lifted a knife and commenced with dicing something on the counter. He reached over and lifted up a gutted fish, gave it a few whacks, then tossed it all into the pan, which he then placed on a rack above a small kitchen fire. He grabbed a ladle that was hanging over the stove and stirred the contents of the pan. Clarence shifted on the couch, rising to his feet. The springs in the cushions creaked, and the man looked over his shoulder at him. The man sighed, his tone exasperated. Hear me out before you make me kill you, my boy. Clarence felt the ghost of invisible fingers grasp his neck and the echo of black dots dancing in his vision. And he decided that, seeing as he'd woken up alive, the man's request was beyond reasonable. All right, Clarence said, giving the man an equally wary grin. Do you have a name? Has it been so long that they've forgotten me? My face used to be plastered all over the place. The man looked almost offended. Clarence found himself resisting the urge to shrug. I'm from a rather small town. We didn't get much by the way of news, Clarence said. Ha! So remote that they never heard of the Necro Killer? Clarence felt the grin fall off his face, a chill running down his spine. The man laughed. Thought he's dead now, didn't you? Not dead. Imprisoned. Albion doesn't waste things if he thinks he might need them later. I've been rotting in a cell for the past 15 years, the man snarled. Clarence didn't know what to say, but one thought came to mind. Why am I not dead? If you really are the Necrokiller, I should be dead. The Necrokiller hates his own kind. I myself don't like identifying as a Necromancer, but you hate them, right? I'm not going to justify my actions or motives to a mere boy who has no clue what he's talking about. The Necrokiller straightened to his full height. Do you want to hear my proposal, or should I snuff you out like I did all those mages in the bog? Clarence's mind jumped to Susan, rooted to the floor of his cabin, and he felt sick. Did you kill the girl I had tied up in my cabin?
What a great
Necrokiller.
line.
Truly a man of vision.
You didn't perchance murder that person that, no? Yes? Huh. The Necrokiller looked at him darkly. Why do you care that what I did to her, we did with her? He flipped the food in the pan with a violent twist of his wrist. It didn't look like you had anything good planned for her yourself. Clarence gritted his teeth. I didn't know what to do with her. I was more concerned with you at my front door. There was another violent flick of the wrist while Clarence waited for the man to respond. When he finally did, his tone was ice cold. I didn't kill the girl in your cabin. I left her a message. But if I were you, I'd be more concerned about yourself. I'll be frank. Albion will hunt me until he finds me and kills me. I will not allow that to happen again. Moreover, I intend on killing him and the whole Mage Council. It's what I'm good at. I brought you here to join me. If you don't, you can die here and now. Clarence ran his fingers through his hair. I don't want to kill anybody. That's a funny statement from the kid that tried to explode my skull, the man smiled. You attacked me, Clarence took a step back. I simply attacked you. The council, however, wants you dead. That girl you saved would not have hesitated to take your life. You can accept me as your mentor and teacher, and we'll have more than a fighting chance. Or I'll kill you here and now. Clarence fidgeted where he stood, considering. Joining the
standing now?
Necrokiller. He stood up a while back.
I've been listening, and I missed that part.
You've been
I'm sorry.
listening like a hawk.
He got
Well,
out
no.
of bed, standing up,
Hear
and
me
the
out.
spring of the mattresses
me
made a
out.
noise when he was standing up out of bed.
Hear me
Squeaky,
out.
squeaky, squeaky.
What I inferred was hit the Necrokiller saying, "Hey, don't do that," and then in my mind I was like, "All right, I'm gonna stay on this bed and not stand up."
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
fair point. Clarence is bad at taking directions.
Because, hear me out, if I was just confronted and assaulted, would I want to do something that would appear as, aggressive?
Hostile?
Standing up and approaching someone in a conversation like this does not seem like, "Hey, buddy, old pal." It seems a bit
that
more
would be...
positioning for,
That'd be step
an
closer
attack.
so you can kill
Clarence's
him.
gifts are elsewhere, Brandon.
I know! I know!
Clarence fidgeted where he stood, after standing up, considering.
Shut
Joining the Necrokiller on his crusade of revenge didn't sound like a healthy life path, but he also didn't like the idea of being found out and killed by Albion and his mages, or killed outright by the clearly unstable man before him. Tell you what, I can't argue with your exquisite points, and I'm in desperate need of a tutor. I will consent to being your apprentice, but you will have a hard time convincing me to kill people. The Necrokiller smiled and gave the food in the pan a final victorious swirl and set it down. It's settled then. You, boy, are now the apprentice of the Necrokiller. Congratulations. And no worries about me encouraging you to kill anyone. The council will change your mind of that soon enough. Now,
Oh.
dinner. He's my favorite guy. He's
I
my
like
favorite
him.
character in the
Huh?
whole book.
I like him.
Yeah.
The fish was a little dry and the onions strong, but Clarence was hungry and at least there was plenty of it. The Necrokiller, on the other hand, ate slowly, drinking more than anything. He watched Clarence, and Clarence watched him back. The man's face was gaunt, eyes and cheeks hollowed, skin ash-tone and leathery. He looked like a corpse. A thought came to Clarence, and he idly scratched at his nose. The screen popped up and framed the Necromancer. Clarence chewed his fish, but the screen was empty. He resisted the urge to frown when the screen didn't immediately load, and was about to swipe his nose again when finally the words scrolled across the screen. Necromancer?
Question
Level?
mark?
Become competent. End tutorial.
Ah, thank you. I forgot how helpful she is.
Super helpful.
Truly a savant.
He blinked at the screen, nearly forgetting for a moment that the necro-killer was sitting on the other side staring at him. He gave his nose one final rub and resumed eating his dish, thinking. It was the first time his screen hadn't been able to pick up on the stats of a creature he'd encountered. He assumed it meant that the man was actually living and not a real corpse. The man was the first living entity he had tried using his pop-up to see their stats. He eyed the necro-killer. The man returned his gaze, cup lifted to his lips. The corner of his lip turned up in a sardonic smile, and Clarence stuck back down to his food. The man looked dead. Almost without prompting, Clarence imagined himself with the same worn look and skeletal physique. It was an uncomfortable thought. After they finished their meal, the necro-killer got up and stretched, arching his back. He then turned his head from side to side, causing a rippling popping sound to echo through the room. He picked up a candle and gestured to the door. This way. Trying not to look as hesitant as he felt, Clarence stood
That was
and
a
followed the man out of
fast
the
this
room.
way, Joe. This way.
This way. This way. Come on, let's go. I want to show you the place. He led Clarence down a series of stone hallways, passing a few doors and a massive flight of stairs that seemed to lead up to the rafters of the keep. Because Clarence knew that it was a keep.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah, Clarence knows.
He's really good at these kind of things. The whole building was run down and smelled damp and rotten. At the end of one of the long hallways, the necro-killer opened a large wooden door, revealing a large room with one flight of stairs spiraling down into darkness, and the other off the side that led up to a large open room above them.
Like my sanity.
Mm-hmm. The necro-killer took them down to the dark stairs, the light of the candle illuminating the damp steps. When they reached the foot of the stairs, the light extended forward, revealing what Clarence could only describe as a dungeon. Rock walls with manacles hanging in orderly rows on pegs. A wooden door sat open, and the necro-killer led them in, revealing a large room divided into cells. There were 8 of them, with 4 on each side. Their doors were corroded green, and all were in various states of disrepair. Clarence eyed them warily, suddenly suspicious about where this was going to. He hung back slightly, though still following as his captor led him to the closed...
master?
His mentor. Master.
Master of the puppets?
Master.
He is a puppet master,
And I
that's for
kick him,
sure.
sir. Good song. And led him to the closed doors in the last cell in the back. It was the largest of the 8, the most biggest and beautifulest, almost like it had been in a common room for the guards and then had been repurposed into something more useful. In it were 5 large tables set up like 5 dots on a 6-sided dice, 1 table in the middle and 4 on the outside. Right. But it wasn't the tables that caught Clarence's gaze, it was the covered bodies that graced all but one of the side tables. He stared down at the mildew-stained sheets that covered them, stomach starting to churn. They'd clearly been there a while. He shot the necro-killer a glance, but the man was looking at the empty table, his expression unreadable. Clarence both wanted and didn't want to reach out with his man-eye to get a feel for what might be under the sheets on the tables. It could give him an idea what his captor was thinking, but the feeling of the room had him hesitating. The necro-killer was still standing at the doorway, a hand placed on the cell door, seemingly lost in thought as he stared at the center table. Clarence cleared his throat. You all right? The necro-killer pried his eyes away and looked at Clarence, his expression dark. This, my young friend, is the depth, the darkness, that necromancer can take you if you're not careful. He wrenched open the gate, ignoring the awful screeching sound that emanated from it, and entered, leaving Clarence to stumble after him. He strode over the center table and pulled the sheet back. Bile rose in Clarence's throat. It wasn't human, or at least not all of it. Furry arms ending in talons were stitched neatly onto a human torso. Long, scaly legs that looked like a kangaroo's jutted awkwardly forward. The head. He caught a glimpse of something that looked like a deflated balloon before jerking his head back down. He didn't want to know anything about what he had seen, what he had been under the sheet. What had he been under the sheet?
About
What had about
anything
under?
about what had been under the sheet.
Didn't want to know anything about what had been under the sheet.
It's an awful sentence. I
That
will agree with
feels
you.
awkward.
As
I'm
awkward
getting-
as awkward as Clarence?
Not
Oh
really.
yes.
Okay. If you want, you can leave a note there.
No, that's too much work.
Okay, moving on then.
I don't like working with Word.
Wow.
Judge
More
it
than
with
he
your-
has to.
Does anyone?
Judge it with your necromancy. Clarence looked at the man's still expressionless face and then shook his head. I don't think I want to. Good. Do it anyway. It's worse than it looks. The man's voice was calm, but Clarence could feel the steel in the command. He looked back at the body on the table and again felt the bile rise in his throat.
Yummy.
And if I don't? Clarence asked. I think I made myself clear about the alternative to not being my apprentice would be. Clarence closed his eyes for a moment, then turned his attention to the monstrosity on the table, letting out a low hum as he rubbed his nose. The table lit up in a series of shapes and colors, little icons popping up, identifying an intricate network of creatures and magic. His window popped up. Dark Spliceling. Intended level 15. Type undeterminable. Status 0% usability. Key components. Dragon Eye. 1 human male torso. A child's heart. He could see the lines of black as the list kept going, but Clarence's eyes were locked on the third ingredient. He could feel his hands slightly shaking as he swiped his nose and stared into the space the pop-up screen left behind. Nope, don't like that. Don't like that at all, he muttered, shaking his head. Reanimating the squirrel had been bad, but this was a whole other level. Evil. What had happened in this room, it was evil of the worst kind. He turned back to the necro-killer, ready to demand an explanation when he saw the man's face. His face was grim, but his eyes held something different, something deep and dark that Clarence couldn't name, and it stopped the words in their place. The necro-killer's eyes shifted back to the empty table, and his lips pursed. The last time I walked in this room, I was someone else. He paused, then turned from the table. Come, we have work to do. Albion has decided to bring his dark art back to life.
This.
You have much to learn, and we have so little time. This dark art, not his. Just a dark art.
I was like, hold on, wait a second.
Yeah.
He didn't invent. He's not the Bill Gates of splicing.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah. So the dark art of splicing people and
What
animals.
a lovely art.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Who?
Shout out to everyone who's ever seen Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I don't need to say anything more.
Oh yeah, that's brutal. That's brutal.
That's
That is the driving factor behind why I'm a scientist. Not really.
what?
What?
You work with pasta.
That I splice together.
Oh no!
You monster.
Have you heard of panetti? No, and you never will.
I don't want to know about panetti. Okay, everybody, go to Google, look up
that
panetti.
that was chapter 13. What'd you
That was
think,
chapter
Brandon?
13.
I'm listening. I'm interested.
Okay. We finally got there. He's interested.
I've been interested, but the interest is more like mild irritation at Clarence for being so. Well,
being
I don't know.
himself.
Joe,
Being
he's
just a
being
genuine-
you, and
A
that
genuine. He's
Yep.
just such a
Yeah,
guy.
I kind of based him off of Joe's personality and my
Which is
projection
flattering
of Joe.
And
Um,
it's
he
mixed
obviously
feelings for
isn't
me.
doing everything that Joe would do. Like he's not Joe, but some of the things like I took some inspiration from Joe.
Yeah,
Let me put
yeah.
it that way.
But
Yeah,
what I mean
still don't
is
know how I feel
like
about it.
Joe
going.
would still be like, "Oh, necromancy?
Ooh.
Let's dive into that."
Let's take a look-see.
Clarence,
I
I couldn't care less. I'd rather cut my trees down.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think I would have gone the route of the tree as quickly as Clarence did.
Yeah, he was leaning hard into that druid persona.
I
I'll tell you
would have
what.
I would have been doing a lot more various types of experimenting within the first 24 hours, definitely.
Oh yeah, me too. But
I would
that's
have
just like me as
a
Brandon and
hard
not.
time with managing mana. I would have it spent within the first hour of every day, easily. I
Yeah,
would
I mean
be
Oh
that's
man.
good. That's how you build it up and get more of it,
right,
right?
but
Is by
like
using
in
it.
situations of like, oh man, I need magic, I need to defend myself, and it's like, oh boy,
That would also be a fun book because you never have the mana you need because you're
I
always experimenting. That would
yeah.
be a great character to write.
Yeah, so it's like the most powerful mage in the world, but he like does everything by 8 a.m. and but no one like knows, so they're always scared of him, and he's always like threatening to do it, but he knows he doesn't have it.
Yeah.
It's like,
This is
Don't
don't
an
make
make
me.
anime trope.
you saw what I did at 6 a.m. Hmm? Hmm?
It's 8:03.
I'm kidding. I would
Exactly.
be sleeping into noon. Oh, there we go. I fixed it. If I sleep in, then I'll use then that'll be the time.
Okay. So chapter 14.
Chapter 5, Chapter 14.
Chapter Fun Teen.
Fun teen.
An
Introduction to
introduction to
necromancy.
necromancy.
I think a fun way to pronounce necromancy is necromancy.
I am partial to necrodancy because
Some bones got that boogie.
no, because in RuneScape the necromancy rituals is more or less you dancing and doing various movements. And I quite enjoy that.
That
Oh my
makes
goodness, what was
sense.
that?
You brought me to life using the Macarena?
You monster.
Insulting. How dare you?
I'm gonna go find a fire and
At,
jump in it
at
now.
least it wasn't the Cupid shuffle. Clarence stood on the balcony that jutted out to the east side of the mansion's ballroom. It's a mansion now. He looked over the small, overgrown island and into the sea. From his limited understanding, the island he was on was easily 100 miles or more away from his cabin in the bog. He should have spent more time trying to find a map while he was in Volota, and he gritted his teeth. Figuring out how to get off this island wasn't going to be easy. Soft footsteps came from the grand staircase, and Clarence turned from the alcove, catching a glimpse of the necro-killer's head as he came up to the steps into the ballroom. He held 3 books in one hand, which he placed down on a table. Clarence left the balcony and its pleasant view, joining the necro-killer at the table in the center of the dance hall. The man examined him with serious eyes. You seem to have a gift for breaking bones and reanimating plant-based creatures. What have you figured out so far? I can't imagine you've had much formal training. Clarence shrugged. Like you said, I can break bones. I can age dead wood and plants to dust. I can make trees grow limbs, shape them in a way I like. Sentences are sentencing. The necro-killer nodded. Explains the girl tangled in your floor. The necro-killer mused. That kind of manipulation is costly, burns through a lot of mana. What else have you tried? Clarence bit back the urge to question the necro-killer about the girl in his cabin, choosing to instead respond to the question. That's about it. I tried to reanimate a squirrel once, and it didn't go particularly well. The older necromancer gave him a long look. I can only imagine. You seem to have found some interesting ways to use your necromancy. I've only heard of a few necromancers that care to manipulate plants. They, of course, are all dead, so I won't be of much help there. What I can help you with is fighting. I happen to be the foremost expert when it comes to dueling necromancers and mages. Clarence glanced at the books. 2 of the 3 appeared to be hymnals, while the other appeared to be a textbook entitled The Art of Healing. It was very worn and appeared to have suffered from the damp climate along with the rest of the mansion. The other books weren't old, but in good condition. A healing book? I didn't know that was possible, Clarence said. The necro-killer ran his hand over the worn cover. There are entire libraries. Well, there were entire libraries specifically dedicated to warmancy. Knowing how to build an army of undead is well and good, but this book is all we'll need to make you the deadliest necromancer alive. Well, second deadliest. The necromancer chuckled. Unfortunately, you are going to have to work for that title, but we will get you there. Considering we're the last two left, isn't it already mine by default? Clarence asked. While Clarence probably wasn't much compared to what the average necromancer was supposed to be capable of, given the available pool of necromancer, he was a silver medalist. At least. The necrokiller looked at him incredulously. You know very little, boy. There's certainly more than just the two of us. The Mage Council has things they need done that only necromancers can do, so they kept not only me, but a handful of children alive to be taught how to perform the various tasks. I have 7 apprentices that have come before you. What? Clarence stammered. The necrokiller smiled. Don't worry, they only have about 10 or 15 years' experience more than you. There are others, no doubt, but I will get you up to speed. It won't be a problem. Clarence's head reeled, combating a tide of anger that welled up inside him. Hadn't the good angel brought him here because there were no necromancers left? That is what seemed to have been implied. If there were more alive, why did she need him? Why was he ripped from his world? His ranch! It's all coming back to him, just full force. Why on earth? He realized he was mumbling to himself. They need healers, boy, the necrokiller answered, unaware that he was answering the wrong question. They need mindless bodies to test their spellcraft on. They need warmancers as a hidden knife to put down rebel mages. Like I said, Albion doesn't get rid of something he finds useful. Mass murder seems to fly in the face of that, Clarence muttered. Well, they don't need everyone, the necrokiller stated coldly. They decided on a percentage, and it was less than 1. Enough to have the perks of necromancy, but not enough to threaten their rule. Clarence wanted to ask the man why he joined Albion and his fellow mages in their little escapade of genocide. According to Piper, they would not have succeeded if it weren't for the necrokiller. Clarence didn't dare ask the man, though. He was unstable, perhaps broken. Such a line of questioning was likely to go poorly. Don't worry, the necrokiller continued. There are a few painful tricks that we will implement that tilt the playing field in your favor. Wonderful, Clarence thought. Pain was something he unfortunately knew a thing or two about. It will be better than having your brain turned to mush. Yes.
Yeah.
It will be better than having your brain turned to mush or your heart and lungs shredded. Can you read well enough to understand this? The necrokiller held up the healing book. Clarence nodded. This little factoid still bothered him. He was unsure how that worked being from an entirely different planet. There's no way English existed here. Good heavens, English wasn't English 1,000 years ago on Earth. Was there some type of translation magic going on? That was unlikely. What were the chances that they used the same alphabet that he did? No, it was more likely that the angel had just warped his brain and replaced English with whatever language he was speaking. What are you thinking? The necrokiller asked. Just got lost in contemplating my place in this world, Clarence muttered. But yes, I can read. You probably should switch to contemplating how you're going to stay alive in this world. The necrokiller slapped the book in Clarence's chest. Read this. I will be back with the training tool in a couple of days. Memorize as many body parts as you can in the meantime. Clarence was not close to finishing the healing book when the necrokiller returned 3 days later. He entered the hall, a dead body in tow. By its robes, Clarence could tell he had been a mage. The training tool, it would seem. He swallowed, trying to keep his face stoic. The man walked in, seemingly of his own accord, but Clarence's passive skill pinged, telling him that the man was indeed dead. Clarence closed his book and got up from his alcove and walked over to the necrokiller. This is the training implement you're going to get? Clarence asked. You don't approve of my methods, the necrokiller observed with a smirk. No, Clarence stated flatly. The necrokiller looked amused. You realize that if this man were still alive, he would kill you, and there would be plenty more looking to do just that. So quit it with your grandstanding and tell me what you've learned. I've learned about bones. There's a lot in this book. I don't know half of what's going on in its pages. Clarence paused. I'm already proficient in breaking them. I just don't have them all memorized, but I'm getting there. Not an easy thing to break bones. You like expensive magic, it seems, the Necro Killer mused, looking over the dead mage. Though it is less complicated than attacking blood flow or vital organs, we will work with that for now. Have you figured out how necromancy works? How we are different from mages and druids? I don't know anything, Clarence admitted. Nothing? The man frowned. Just what I've been able to figure out on my own. I don't know how that compares to mages or druids. I don't know how they work. The Necrokiller's frown deepened. Where are you from, boy? Clarence let out a long breath. I don't know how to explain to you where I'm from. What do you mean you can't explain? The man looked at him, an eyebrow raised in interest. You know the good angel? Clarence asked. The Necrokiller's eyes narrowed slightly, eyebrow still raised. I do? Well, I was commanded by her, at least I think it was her. From my world, she seems to be the most likely candidate. I don't know if there are any other deities. She meets the description, a golden-haired woman bathed in brilliant light. The Necrokiller didn't say anything, so Clarence continued, temper starting to raise. You know what I get for being teleported across the stars? Powers. That's the ruling class will kill me just for having. And a bug pop-up window from an 80s adventure game that I still have to close every time it opens. Translucent? No. Wave away. Too much common sense. I have to brush my nose, for goodness sakes, every single time to get rid of the thing. I lost my ranch, my grandfather's ranch. Do you know what it's like to have everything handed to you, then have like a blonde woman pluck you up out of a field and drop it into a swamp, then tell you that everyone is out to kill you? You want to know why I don't know anything? Because this isn't my home. Not this island, not this country, not this damn planet. So if you want to know where I'm from, it's not here. It's not anywhere. He realized suddenly that he was yelling. Not as loud as the person reading. And who he was yelling at, and he stopped.
I was honestly expecting you to yell louder, because that's how it would feel. As I was like, oh, where's the yelling, man?
I do live in an apartment, and there are neighbors.
Look.
Studio isn't soundproof.
I live in an apartment too, and they never hear me yelling when we're playing games. All right?
I don't know how thin the walls are. Well, I have a decent idea of how thin the walls are, but I don't want to test it.
Carry
on. He realized suddenly that he was yelling, and who he was yelling at, and he stopped, sides heaving slightly as he tried to regain control of his breath. The Necrokiller looked at him for a long time, his expression slightly concerned. Finally he spoke. I suppose hoping you'd be sane was an unrealistic expectation for a necromancer youth who escaped the extermination. The mind does strange things when one entire people is slaughtered before their eyes. Clarence stared at the man in disbelief. He hadn't heard a word he said. He started to sputter, but the Necro Killer waved his hand dismissively. It doesn't matter where you think you're from. You're sane enough. Perhaps more than you should be. Certainly more so than you will be. The man chuckled. Clarence shook his head. This was exactly the kind of reaction he'd been expecting. As if he could sense Clarence's disappointment, the Necrokiller reached over and patted his arm. It's all right, my boy. Sanity is well overrated. Now, he stood up straight. Let's begin our lessons. He turned away, still talking, as if addressing a lecture hall full of students. I will start from the beginning. As necromancers, we manipulate bodies, living or dead, with our mana. Our mana is self-generating. This means you produce your own mana. This is important to know. But it has its limits, and you need to know how to work with them. As part of what you need to learn how to heal, as part of that, you need to learn how to heal yourself. It is not helpful in a fight, but it will be needed so you don't bleed to death after. And remember, he grinned at Clarence, if you know how to heal a man, you know how to kill him. That's a poster logo right there.
It should be, if you know how to heal a man, you know how to kill a man. I should change that.
If you know how to heal a man, you know how to kill a man. It is a gender-neutral term. It's universally applicable.
It also applies to women.
Justice is unisex. Sorry, I don't know why that came to my mind.
Justice knows no gender.
Everyone must die.
But hold on, there's only one to. Yeah, you know what? There's a Slipknot song, and I'm not going to say the title. But
Thank
it's
you.
very accurate.
I did my time, and I want out.
Not that one.
I know, but that's the one that came to mind. With the snap of his fingers, the necro-killer directed the corpse to sit in a chair at the table. He had it rest its arms on the table, then produced a knife from his pocket and slit the man's forearm. Blood oozed in a sickly stream down the arm, sluggish without a heart to pump it. The sight was disturbing, and Clarence was even more certain of the necromancer's insanity. Ignoring Clarence's disgust, the necro-killer chanted softly, and the cut shrank and then closed, leaving behind an almost imperceptible purple scar. The necro-killer looked up at Clarence from where he was, bent over the table. Now it's your turn. Hope you are paying attention. He took the knife and made another slit. Follow my chant and reach out to the wound. Clarence hadn't paid a lot of attention, but did his best to mimic the man. The chant had a Celtic feel, and Clarence wondered again how that sort of thing was possible. He reached out with his necromancy and attempted to heal the cut in the dead man's flesh. He knew he got it when he felt the mana start to trickle away and his window pop up. Healing hexbind skin has been learned. Type of spell, crude. Tutorial voice, having stroke. Ha! Clarence brushed his nose, removing the window, revealing a mostly scabbed over yet still slightly oozing wound. The necro-killer was frowning. You don't have the gift for healing, that is evident. Well, you will need this then. The necro-killer stabbed the knife into the table, then pocketed his healing book. Keep trying until you run out of mana. Then, when your mana comes back, try again. I'll be gone for a few more days. By then you should be somewhat proficient. You want me to mutilate this corpse and keep trying to put it back together? Is that what you're saying? Clarence looked back at the zombie with its empty eyes. This had been a person. In fact, it was still a person. Just being dead didn't change that. His stomach flipped. The necro-killer shrugged. That or cut yourself, I don't care. I did bring him all the way here so you wouldn't have to. I assure you he doesn't mind it in the least. He turned up towards the stairs, tall frame black in the entryway. He looked over his shoulder at Clarence and said after a pause, Don't get too caught up in sensibilities when it comes to the dead boy. We all join them eventually. He then turned back down the stairs and was gone.
What do you think, Brandon?
It just goes up a notch after after 13. It gets real quick.
It starts getting hard, yeah.
Getting hard? Nah, it starts getting like where the good stuff's at. This is good eating right here.
Good.
There are 3 types of people, and we are all in this podcast.
Really? I thought the author would be more, tolerable towards it.
No, he actually. I'm trying to think about me being Clarence in this situation, and that's still a tough one. That's not.
I will say that being from our world and having just a basic entry level knowledge of medical information, I feel like we would be Clarence would have a better advantage with healing magic because he better understands
How the human
the
body works.
intricacies.
Well, he came from a
Then
broken home, Brandon.
without magic.
And I would also say that based off of how his magic system works, like even if he has a good understanding of how it works, like the leveling of that magic still has to be done from rudimentary to more experience. Like even if he knew how it worked, I think the good angel willing has made the 80s gameplay style not in his favor.
So it is.
Yeah.
It is
Don't get me
still
wrong,
skill
she's really
based.
bad at her job.
And necromancers, like Brandon, it's a lot more. Like they're kind of think of like Chinese medicine. How they have all these
That's
different
what I'm
terms
imagining.
for things. It would be the same here.
Mhm.
Like they know how to do these things, and they have different terms, and they may think the body works in a certain way, and they describe it. And their description is really close to how the body actually works, but they don't know that, so they use these terms and these other things. So that's kind of how it works.
Oh,
in
that
this
is how
sense.
old Clarence is.
How old is he?
I found the magic number.
You did?
12.
Yeah. We'll get to
gosh,
it in the
no.
4th paragraph. Hopefully that doesn't change throughout the book. That
He
would
gets
be
younger.
exciting.
Using
I have no
necromancy, I
idea.
de-aged myself by killing all the
Ugh.
dead all the dead cells,
Yes.
reviving them. Am I close? Am I getting warmer?
That's gross.
Spell
Yeah.
learned.
That-
Animate cell.
That's why you look gray all the time. It's just a really
That's-
healthy looking gray.
What does that
Yeah,
even mean?
man.
Healthy gray.
Yes.
You have such a youthful, deathly complexion to you.
Yeah. Okay. Do we want to do the next one?
I'm hooked on phonics.
Okay. Chapter 15, Lighthouse.
I love this chapter. Clarence walked through the mansion grounds. He made his way past some old trees and across a grown-over cobblestone path to the seashore. The necro-killer had been gone a few days now, and Clarence didn't mind his absence. The man was clearly unstable, albeit he did know what he was doing when it came to necromancy. After he had left, Clarence did as instructed, cutting and healing the body. It was disturbing at first, but hours of practice made him numb to the procedure. He was going to have to start embracing this necromancy thing. If he thought about it, he was basically becoming a mortician. If you thought about necromancy from that lens, it was somewhat less disturbing. 3 days of work and he was getting better. The wounds were fully closing, and while he hadn't gotten them to fully matured scars, the scabs were solid. As an additional bonus, his cuts were more clean and professional looking. The necro-killer was still gone, doing who knows what and who knows who. Probably killing more mages for Clarence to cut up. The thought was unsettling. And Clarence shook his head, trying to clear his mind. If he thought too hard about it, he'd feel complicit in whatever the crazed man was doing. Maybe he didn't have a choice in being here, but he also wasn't responsible for what the other man did. He knew this, but it didn't change the guilt he felt. He felt like he was right back in foster care, before his grandfather saved him. It was stupid. He was 21 and still helpless. There it is. Happy birthday.
Yay!
Yay! He can drink.
We'll
That
see.
helplessness
We'll see if that is consistent. Oh my
We'll see.
gosh.
Editor,
Adam
you know
doesn't
what to
remember.
I don't.
how old is he? His creator doesn't
3.
even know.
It's a big document. Yeah. No, he's 21 for sure.
At the youthful anime age of 14. Just into high school.
Just out of college.
Just out of college.
I'm imagining a JoJo 14-year-old. Those guys are jacked.
Yeah, those 14-year-olds are not 14. They've been 14 for the last
30
18
years.
There's a YouTube video about Pokemon where it references Ash, and it's a JoJo adaptation. So it's Ash Ketchum from Pokemon, but like animated like JoJo, and he's like, "I've been 10 the last 34 years." Like, buddy.
Save some for the rest of us.
Oh, it was stupid. He was 21 and still helpless. That helplessness was the reason he finally caved and began practicing on the corpse. Not because he'd given in, but because he needed all the tools he could get. He would learn, adapt, and make his life his own. To do that, he needed to become proficient in necromancy, which meant practicing on corpses. There was no way around it. Clarence fingered through a history book as he walked. He found it at the mansion's library. It seemed the continent he was on was quite large, but it had somewhere around 14 major floating cities varying in population. They were, of course, mostly inhabited by mages. There were 5 other mainland-based cities with a mixed population. At the time of the book's publishing, the cities held anywhere from 200 and 700,000 people, with 35% being mages and approximately 50% druid. The last 10% or so had been necromancers. Clearly, the book was a bit outdated. Apparently, necromancers were more commonly found in secluded communities. The book made mention of 5 cities where necromancers were the majority, the smallest being about 2,000 and the largest capping off at 50,000 on one of the floating islands. Clarence would have to ask the necro-killer about the populations before and after the cleansing. Surely that many people couldn't have just been wiped off the map. Maybe the man knew of a colony or group that had survived the genocide. Clarence came to a spot where the cobblestone path branched in two different directions. In front of him was the top of the cliff with a steep drop to the ocean's crashing waves. The path to the left wound down toward the beach, while the right path, on the other hand, climbed higher along the cliff. Clarence took the right path.
'Cause he's a saint.
He took the correct path. His walk eventually brought him to a lighthouse. It was old, much like the mansion. Vines and moss covered it from top to bottom, only the occasional patch of white popping through to show its original color. The door handle, rusted to half its previous size, was so pocketed with divots that he was surprised that it didn't break when he turned it. With a gentle jiggle, he pulled the door open. He climbed the long, winding stairs up several flights, only to find an iron door barring him from accessing the upper room. They separated him from the main room of the lighthouse, and a large window overlooking the ocean. He shook the bars experimentally, but they were all well fortified and hardly made a sound. He was about to make his way back down the steps when he heard a soft sound from the upper room. Then there was another, like the shuffle of little feet sliding across the floor. Not sure exactly what kind of thing would warrant being locked up, he backed down a few steps, eyeing the door cautiously. He stepped back in surprise as a little girl appeared around the corner. She was very young, somewhere between 8 and 10 years old. Her clothes were dirty and moth-bitten, and her hair was matted and unkempt with grime sticking out from her almost sickly complexion. She looked like a ghost. She blinked, staring at Clarence. She stepped forward to the bars and pressed her face between them. The bars lined up with the grime on her face, and her eyes were filled with such sadness that he felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He didn't realize he had moved until he found himself standing just a foot away from the bars. "Hello," he said gently. "Hello," she responded softly, her voice airy and sorrowful. "What's your name?" he asked. She shrugged. "Don't remember." He frowned. "How long have you been locked in here?" "Forever, I think," the girl said in a soft voice. She looked up at him, her eyes brightening as a thought came to her, and she stood up a little straighter. "Who are you?" "I'm Clarence." "Oh." The girl wilted against the bars, a little white hand hanging slightly past them. "I thought you were my father, but I don't think my father's name is Clarence." "How did you get here? Who put you here?" Clarence eyed her small hand, feeling the urge to go over and hold it and tell her everything would be okay. She shrugged. "I don't remember. It's been a long time. But my dad will come and get me." "Who's the last person you've seen?" The girl shrugged again. "I don't know. I don't know." She looked up at him and extended her hand. "Do you know? Can you help me?" Alarm bells echoed in his mind as he looked at her fingers, but she looked so frail and neglected. Who knew the last time she'd been given a chance to touch another person? He stretched out his hand, grabbing her little fingers. They were cold, clammy, almost dead. His pop-up window came into view, and as he saw the title, he felt his heart sink. Doomed Immortal Child. Parasitic. Origin human. Very dangerous. Having lost its heart, it maintains life by siphoning mana from living things. This can prove fatal to anyone to come in contact with it. Doomed immortal children are rare and not formed naturally. End tutorial. Clarence felt
pause.
very tired.
But was that the most helpful prompt
That's
yet?
probably the most helpful prompt so far.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, go on.
It only would have popped up if he touched. Like, if he tried to scan with his magic, it wouldn't have done the same thing.
Yeah, you're
He
not
had
wrong.
to experience it.
Exactly, yeah.
Glancing at his health bar, he noted that it was draining at an alarming rate. He brushed his nose, getting rid of the pop-up. He looked at the girl. Her eyes were brighter, and her skin had a healthy, almost pink hue. She was still looking up at him hopefully, seemingly unaware of the situation. Smiling gently, he gave her hand a little squeeze before pulling back. She clearly didn't want to let go, but letting her arm fall back to her side. She rubbed her face and took a deep breath. Can you get me out? I need to find my dad. Clarence shook his head. He didn't know what a doomed immortal child was, but letting her go seemed like a poor choice. He brushed his nose, glanced at his mana bar, and was surprised to see it was almost empty. His health was lower. 15 of the 50 square clicks were gray. 12 of the 15 had little X's running through them. He scanned the highlighted line on the tutorial page. Permanent health loss due to contact with doomed immortal child. Become competent. He hoped that didn't mean what he knew it meant. Stupid. He was tired. Very tired, like he just finished a day of hard work while having a fever at the same time. The health bar seemed a bit pointless. He had felt the life being sucked from him without needing or wanting the update. I can't. You seem to be sick. Very sick. I think you might harm people if I let you out, he said after a moment. I won't hurt anyone, she whispered. I need to find my dad. He can make me better. He's a healer. The best. He can make me better. She was gripping the bars with both hands, resting her forehead against them, her eyes big and pleading. What's his name? Clarence asked. I can't remember, she stammered, but you know him. Everyone knows him. Clarence shook his head. I'm guessing he's a necromancer? She nodded enthusiastically. Yes, the best healer out of all of them.
The Necro Killer.
And dead along the rest
You're
of them.
no fun, Brandon.
He couldn't tell her that. He was no counselor. Come on, Clarence doesn't know that yet. Get on this page.
Guessing.
Be quiet. Plus, depending on how long she'd been there, his stomach sank. She's an immortal. She could have been there a very, very long time, Brandon. Do you know where the necromancers went? He asked. She shook her head, shifting her weight from leg to leg as she clung to the bars. Did they all go somewhere? Is that why it's taking my dad so long to find me? Something like that. Clarence just looked at her for a long moment. I'm going to be on the island for a while. There are some books I could read to you, perhaps tell you some stories. If I hear of your dad, I'll let you know that you're alive. I'll let him know that you're alive. She pursed her lips. All right, she said. You promise you'll come back? I'll try. It's dangerous on the island. I'll most likely be back, but if I don't, well, I don't want to keep you hoping. I show up if something bad happens to me. She looked so sad at the prospect of being left alone once again that it made Clarence feel physically ill. But the Necro Killer would be back, and Clarence did not want to be found here when he returned. Tell you what, can you read? He asked. She nodded vigorously. Yeah, Mom says I'm a great reader, the best for my age. Here, Clarence passed his history book through the bars, careful not to touch her. I'll get you some more books. They'll probably be boring for someone your age, but it's better than looking out the sea all the time. She shrugged indifferently. I like the sea. Everything out there is free. From the fish to the great sea dragons. I like sea dragons. She began flipping through the pages, looking at the maps and other illustrations. Before leaving, Clarence went outside and found some wildflowers. The cell was so gray, so dead. The little girl needed something more. She clapped her hands in excitement as he set the small bouquet on the floor in front of her cell. On the floor of her cell. She scooped them up into her hands, settling on the floor, suddenly oblivious to Clarence. She was lost in the sweet smells and the vibrant colors of the flowers. Clarence's book lay temporarily discarded on the grimy stone floor. Yeah, well, he could always get it back and clean it off later. Leaving the little girl to her flowers, Clarence left the lighthouse after shutting the door securely, and then wandered back down to the beach. It was a rocky beach, sporting more pebbles than sand. The days on the island had been cold and wet, with mist and constant sprinkling of rain. It was a dreary place, and now it seemed all the worst. The little girl needed help. Clarence was certain he was not going to be able to give. Oh, give her to that period. Gross.
Ah,
Needed
he's editing.
help.
He's editing.
Help, help!
I'm watching it, Brandon.
Coming!
I'm
Help
not. I
Clarence
can't
was
see
certain
that.
he was not going to be able to give. He ground his teeth. Her father may have been able to save her, but there was no chance of that now. Clarence tried to skip a stone across the ocean surface, but only managed to get eaten by one of the rough waves. He tossed a handful of rocks at it in irritation before squaring his shoulders and looking back at the lighthouse. He figured he should get to go on fulfilling his promise to the girl and bring her some more books, perhaps some toys if he could find them. As long as he survived on this island, he was going to make it so the girl didn't feel so alone.
There we go.
Chapter 16,
And chapter
Supplement to Necromancy.
What do you think, Brandon? Chapter 15.
I'm pretty good. I'm
Good.
enjoying all of it.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. No, don't worry. I'm still listening.
Hey, you in the
Honestly.
comments. Stop! No, don't write that speculation. It might not be true. Wait.
Yeah.
Stop.
Just bleep
No,
it out.
hold on. Hold. Wait. No. No. Wait.
Okay. While we're
Fine.
here, do you think it's the Necro Killer?
That's who I think. However, I find it would be a very fun twist if it was what's his name?
Albion.
Yeah.
Oh.
That would be a fun twist.
Oh, that's a very fun twist.
That's a great
Yeah.
twist. I wish I'd thought about that.
Don't
Oh,
implement
no!
that twist now. That's not the twist.
It's definitely not Albion. I promise.
Wrong
It's
twist.
Not Albion.
You got us, Brandon. It's not him.
It's
Judging
not.
by your reaction,
We're just trying to even it out so no one knows. You know.
Yeah.
Because if it were
You
the
could
Necro
just-
Killer, we wouldn't want you to know. And if it were
It could be
Albion, we
anyone.
wouldn't want you to know.
Yeah.
It's probably Faligan.
hear me out.
It's Faligan's daughter.
Yes.
Yes.
You could just like bleep out what I say, make it sound like I'm just giving off a chain of swear words. Right?
Oh, it's beep,
I
beep,
could,
beep, beep,
but
beep.
that I mean, he's the only Necromancer alive. I mean,
No, he's
besides
not.
all the other ones.
Yeah.
Alive besides everyone else.
You know, everyone that's alive.
Yeah.
Besides
That's not
everyone else.
him.
that's
Well,
alive,
I'll tell you this, Brandon. You'll figure it out in the next
It's a resolved.
10
it's a fairly-
chapters. Yeah.
It's a fairly quickly
It
resolved.
resolves
mystery.
itself pretty quickly. Yeah. It's
Oh,
not crazy.
fantastic.
You don't sit on that too long. Like an orphan, not an orphan, like an immortal child in a lighthouse.
Tragic.
Tragic.
I mean, I know that her heart was used on that monstrosity, I feel.
Oh yes, that
Yeah.
makes me really happy that that you caught that. Yep.
Yeah.
It's its whole thing. It's a brilliant little plot thing. It's its own little mini horror story in this book. It's
Yes.
great.
One that Clarence clearly did not pick up on.
See,
Yeah.
when I figured it came from a child, obviously, it even says that. And then once the description was read for the cursed immortal child, I was like, ah, yes. And then I was like, ooh, definitely daddy did something to daughter. Was my thought process because he referenced Full Metal Alchemist.
That's a
Oh,
fun
that
thought.
was on me. That was on me.
Yeah.
did
yeah.
reference
That
that.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to figure out how it all works. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's fun.
Magic. There we go. Plot hole fixed.
Yeah.
Hey, stop!
Really though, that's why I write
Stop
fantasy.
giving away our secret.
No
Yeah.
joke.
Fantasy's easy because you're like, magic!
Here's
And that's why-
historical fiction is just
Ooh,
impossible.
I'm gonna do a hot take, and that's why Star Wars is fantasy, because
It's a space opera.
they say,
It is
oh,
a space
because the
opera.
Force.
Oh, because of the
Oh,
magic.
we need that to work now. Space Force. Force.
Space
Look,
Force.
I'm-
Healing
the
works
best
now. It's the
Space
Force.
Force.
It's the best Force. It's the hugest Force.
I hate the sequel trilogy
You
so
and,
much.
you and everyone
What
else.
passion?
I agree.
There are people that are like, oh, I actually enjoyed it.
Well, now we know you
thanks
don't
for-
have taste.
Now I know that I have to
Individually.
interact with you at a different level than other people.
Yes, indeed. Individually, I was like, hey, Force Awakens, I'm okay. It's just a retelling of New Hope. That's okay. It's
Sure.
a new generation.
Somehow, there's another Death Star. Sure,
To be
fine.
fair, the CGI is awesome, and
Yeah.
the effects
It
are
was
awesome.
pretty neat.
Like,
Oh, the
like
the
not my
reason-
favorite story, but it does look good.
it does
Yeah,
look
hot
pretty awesome.
dumpster fire.
a very fancy looking dumpster fire.
Yeah, like it's got some cool colors in it. We've got some copper, some salt.
Oh, the
You
reason
know.
why all the lightsaber fights are trashy, well,
Ugh.
besides whoever choreographed them being terrible at their job and a sexist comment that I won't say. Um, no, not even that. Never mind. It's just they use light up lightsabers that have much more weight than the carbon fiber and plastic tubing.
That and from a in-universe point of view, you have Kylo Ren, who's only been partially trained in the way of the Jedi, and Rey, who only knows how to use a staff and
Yeah,
uses a lightsaber similar to a staff.
that's fair. And they don't kind of show
That is
that.
good critique. That's a good point,
That's a
Brandon.
good point.
I'm not trying to defend the crappy choreography, but from a point of view, they're not actually trained in how to fight
That's a fair point.
That's
properly.
true. That's
She
true.
does learn how to almost hit a rock a couple times.
Oh yeah, she got real close to that rock. That rock felt it.
Like
I'm not sure I've seen that
toasty.
one.
That's
It's
the second one.
I was on my
it's when
mission.
she meets Luke and Luke trains her in the ways of almost hitting rocks. Good
But
times.
no, Luke doesn't even train her.
He
Luke,
doesn't. He doesn't
which
do
was so
anything.
stupid, he's like, I abandoned the Jedi way, it needs to die. I'm like, well, that's kind of stupid. But then again, Mark Hamill didn't like it either.
he has some family issues.
He's got some daddy issues.
So
Oh my
so the
goodness.
so all of the movies are about family issues. It's about
Uh-huh.
how the Skywalker family's just kind of the worst people ever. And for some reason Ray wants to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Sign me up, coach.
Sign me up. Oh, I want to be associated with these people.
Daddy
Mm-hmm.
issues? Oh yes.
Okay.
We got granddaddy issues.
Should we
All the issues.
great granddaddy issues? Should we
Great granddaddy? Really?
It
That doesn't
runs
track.
in the family.
I thought he was. I.
Well,
we all know that Palpatine is actually Luke's dad.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. No cap. Comment in the comment below
I don't like
why you
the
agree.
implications of that at all.
I mean,
No, I don't. No.
that's better than Magic
That's a-
Baby.
No. That would
It
be
explains
Anakin.
everything.
Anakin.
That's what I meant.
is
Anakin.
okay,
Yeah.
because-
Anakin
Yeah,
is.
no.
is the-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Then
No.
she is
No.
Palpatine, and they are Skywalker.
Exactly.
Personal
Okay.
headcanon. That resolves everything for me.
I
Thank
Hear me
God.
out.
I
That's
got
perfect.
Hear me
you.
out.
I feel better
Oh
now.
no.
I could
No.
watch the movies again
No.
with that on my
I
mind.
can.
and feel so happy.
It was not Sidious. It was Darth
That's why he
Plagueis.
killed all those people.
Yeah.
Darth Plagueis.
Plagueis the Wise. It was a tragedy.
Oh yes. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes.
Do we want to do another chapter?
I could do one more chapter.
Okay. Let's do one more chapter. And then this will set us up good for the next few chapters, which are absolutely to die for.
Dude.
Oh, foreshadowing.
They're really good.
It'll feel like getting punched in your torso really hard.
I feel
I
like
love that.
by the time you reach chapter 13, the book has finally kind of picked up steam. So if people can make it to here, then we're good.
Got a slow burn at the start.
It really
It's a slow
is.
burn.
It's awful. But it all, like, I need all of that. So it's, yeah. It just means I'm not a good author. I mean, the infamous storyteller isn't a good author.
Whoever that is.
Whoever, yeah, that could be. Anyway,
Okay.
we'll let Joe go.
Chapter
And,
16.
Yeah, go for it.
Supplement to Necromancy. A few days later, Clarence sat in his alcove, seated next to the stacks of books he had scrounged from the mansion. One of the stacks consisted of books he had found for the girl. They were mostly history and storybooks about the continent of... I do not know how to pronounce that, buddy.
Try it.
Continent of Elephant,
No, it's not even close to elephant. Try again.
Ephalua,
Eupholia.
Okay, so you need to just get
Efolia?
rid of. You just need to get rid of that first H. Throwing me off.
Efolia?
Efolia? Are you trying to say like
Eh,
efolia or
e,
efolia?
Efolia. Or something like that.
Efolia.
I don't know. I made it up.
Great. The continent is called Efolia.
Yay, we have a name. I love world
Yay!
building.
I made
Confetti.
that up like a week ago.
Yeah.
Sadness.
And
I'm
what he
not even
assumed.
joking.
Yeah. You, when I first read through this book with Adam and Shayla, there was just a lot of insert continent name here, insert character name here, insert place here. It was great. It
Yeah.
really let me
Yeah. I
use my
skipped
imagination.
over all the names and wrote the whole book, and then I've gone back and named everything.
Now he's
So.
playing ad libs.
And what
They were
he
most
assumed.
and what he assumed were likely important historical figures. He thumbed through them and thought they looked a little dry, but stories about long dead people were better than no stories at all. He had been taking her books and toys over the last He'd been taking her books and toys over the last couple of days, and though she didn't seem to understand a lot of what she said, the excitement in her eyes every time he brought her something new gave him motivation to keep looking. In the evenings, he did some research on his own. After finishing the healing book the Necro Killer gave him, he came to a couple of conclusions. First, there was no way he could help the little girl. He lacked the power and skill to even attempt to safely heal her. The book didn't have details specific to her curse, but there had been enough in there to let him know that it would be way over his head. Give him 40 or 50 years and he might be able to attempt it. Which led to his second conclusion. The girl probably had all the time in the world if her title was to be believed. Doomed immortal child? There was no harm in looking for a cure, and given the unlikely chance he survived to his 70s, he might be able to heal her. He could at least provide her with a bit more comfort in the meantime. The Necrokiller's soft pattering drifted up the grand staircase of the ballroom. Clarence left his alcove and strode over to the center table. The man had gotten back late and the night before and promised Clarence another training session in the morning. The older Necromancer was whistling cheerfully. Sporting a new black suit, considerably more modern in style and made of dark-scaled leather, he was clearly in a pleasant mood. Not a good thing, Clarence decided after the man gave him an ominous grin. Clarence, my boy, you finished that book? I have, though I'm afraid I don't know what most of it means or what it's talking about, Clarence responded dryly. The Necrokiller let out a dark chuckle. It can't be helped. I need your help on my little errands, which means we need to get you up to speed as quickly as possible. He looked over at the dead man still resting on the chair, covered in scabs and scars. Good, good. Looks like you're getting it. The Necrokiller hummed softly, and the dead man got up and walked out of the room, heading for the basement prison. I'm going to teach you how to extricate a necromantic
Extract?
Oh, buddy.
Extricate? Maybe it is extricate. I don't know what extricate means. Give me a second.
Hold up. We need to. It wouldn't be extract.
Yeah. It's extricate. Yeah, it's removed, reduced. It's a Shayla word. I mean, it's the editor's word.
It's the Necrokiller's word. He knows the big words.
If there's a big word in
I'm
here
going to
that you
teach
don't
you how
know,
to
it
extricate a
probably didn't
necromantic.
come from me.
I sure hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Extricate. Yeah, extricate's right. Yeah.
Extricate a necromantic hex when it's placed upon you. You'll also learn when to use it, why, and how it's different than simply resisting a hex. Now take your shirt off. Things are going to get bloody.
Oh,
Clarence
bully.
gritted his teeth. He wished he were back on the ranch throwing hay or dragging logs out on the bog with Ulrich and the boys. There was little to no chance that the blood about to be shed would be anyone but his. Clarence began unbuttoning his shirt. The Necromancer picked up his medicine book, waving it in the air. Necromancy is the art of manipulating a body by using one's mana. Druidcraft is manipulating and changing the mana within something, or someone. And spellcasting is making something out of one's mana, like fire or lightning. There lies the three magic systems. Clarence nodded stiffly, draping his shirt over the now empty wooden chair. When a necromantic hex takes hold of you, you have a few options as a necromancer. Let it kill, mend, or alter you. Neutralizing it with an equal amount of mana is also an option. This, of course, gets troublesome if they are very skilled, that they may need less mana for their hexes, or their mana pool may be larger than yours. But even if you are equals in skill and mana, they will drain you faster than you can defend. In general, he who is defending by neutralizing mana uses more mana trying to stay ahead of their opponent. Understand? Yeah, I get the idea. Go on, Clarence said, folding up his shirt. The Necrokiller smiled, tapping the worn book against the table. There is a third option. It's to give their hex an avenue to escape through your skin. This tactic takes a toll on your body, but it will greatly lessen your mana cost in a duel, giving you more mana and therefore more options. The one with the most options wins. This is why we need to be very efficient at healing. It would do no good for you to have a nice fat mana store if you're bleeding out all over the floor. Clarence sighed. He now knew where this was going. The book had mentioned that it was important to be careful when healing other necromancers with hexes because, in some rare cases, they may accidentally resist the hex by expelling it, causing lesions to erupt from their skin. This was going to be painful. To begin, I'm going to apply a light hex to your lungs, the man continued blithely. You'll need to force the hex out through your skin. I recommend you avoid places like your face or other sensitive locations. Without a warning, the man let out a low hum, and suddenly Clarence couldn't breathe. His lungs were paralyzed, as if a terrible force had frozen them mid-breath. The Necrokiller chanted idly, taking up his worn healing book and started to flip through it, ignoring Clarence's increasingly panicked expression. Clarence tried willing the hex out of him, but nothing happened. His body was scrambling to regain control of his lungs, and all he could think of was trying to fight the iron grip crushing him. He could feel his body growing weak, and even as he tried to force the pressure off his lungs, black spots started to fill his vision, and he dropped to his knees. With an exasperated sound, the Necrokiller let go of the hex, and the grip on Clarence's lungs disappeared. Clarence gasped, and a rush of air filled his lungs. He looked up at the Necrokiller only to meet the man's disapproved stare. He waved the book at Clarence. I thought you said you read this. Clarence glared at him. I read the stupid book. But like I said, I have no context for any of it. The Necrokiller placed the book back on the table, shaking his head. Your necromancy is brought from your body and soul by the chants and songs you sing. There's no need to access it in such a manner if you are using it within yourself. The only way for you to figure it out is trial and error, so we will keep trying until you get it. Now take a deep breath. Clarence started to retort, but the man was already humming, and Clarence couldn't breathe. And again, Clarence couldn't breathe. This continued, Clarence starving for breath, trying to will his mana to force the necromancer's bony grip off his lungs. Every time Clarence about broke free of the hex, his pop-up would start to blink to life, and then the necromancer would grin, and suddenly the pressure would build, and the pop-up would flicker out like a candle. It must have been his 100th try when the necromancer finally let him counter. Clarence knew the man had let him because there was an obvious loosening in the icy grip, and his pop-up finally opened. Spell acquired. Neutralize hex. Cost dependent on opponent's mana pool and skill. Clarence looked at his mana bar. It was empty. The Necrokiller shut his book and stood up. You're all spent now. I need to get working on my next projects, which will require the dungeon cleansed from its prior owner's sins. As if on cue, the dead mage appeared with 2 buckets of water and a stash of rags under his arm. Red here will bring you new water as you need it. You want me to clean the dungeon? Clarence asked. He hadn't gone back. The place was vile. He hadn't really considered himself to be a squeamish person, but cleaning a long-dead necromancer's laboratory would be like having to clean out Ten Buddy's basement. I don't think I have the stomach for that. The Necrokiller looked at him and then nodded darkly. The previous owner did leave a nasty mess, but unfortunately it needs to be cleaned out for our purposes. Our purposes? Clarence asked, shrugging on his shirt. Clarence, do you not wish to be my pupil? The man asked threateningly. But Clarence was tired of trying to not upset the man. I mean, I will take what I can, considering my numerous options, but I think we need to come to an understanding. One that isn't predicated on your undisputed ability to kill me whenever you like. Clarence straightened out his shirt. The necro-killer looked at Clarence up and down, his expression unreadable. Clarence braced himself, prepared to feel the vice-like grip return to his lungs. Finally, the man sighed. What do you want, Clarence? I told you at the beginning I would make you the deadliest necromancer in the world. Is that not enough? That's nice, don't get me wrong, but I have no interest in fighting mages or anyone for that matter. I just don't. All I want is a piece of land and a quiet house. I don't know what is to what I don't want is to kill people and clean up long dead body parts of the tortured dead. A piece of land and a quiet house? The necro killer straddled the chair at the table, resting his elbows on his back, all while never taking his eyes off of Clarence. Tell me, Clarence, how are you ever going to have land, a quiet house, a family if you are hunted everywhere you go? I don't know how it's possible that you could have been so sheltered to think you could have that kind of luxury, boy. The only way to what you want is through blood. Why? Clarence asked. Why? Why? The man threw up his hands. Because Albion the Great and his council have decided it. His lips twisted in disgust. I wish the world was different. I didn't always throw life away so easily. He gestured to the mage holding the water buckets. He stopped himself, then he spoke again. His voice was calmer, more controlled. Clarence, there's nothing you can do to get out of who you were born to be. You are a necromancer. Death is your life. Rotting bodies, mindless service, lonely nights, bloody duels, a personal crypt of fallen enemies that inevitably, indubitably become your only companions. So is life in Euphoria. We gotta workshop that spelling. So life in Euphoria as a necromancer. Silence filled the room as the two men stared at each other. Finally, Clarence spoke, his voice coming out in a hoarse whisper. I'm just looking for another option. The necro-killer returned his gaze, expression tired and worn. If there was another way, I would have taken it a long time ago. Then his voice turned hard and resigned. This is simply the reality. You can either embrace it or wait for them to find you and kill you. Those are your options. Ooh, chapter 17, The Lich.
It's a good chapter.
It's a good one.
Oh, what?
I didn't expect that to be the end of the chapter.
That is the end of the chapter.
Yeah, it's a short one.
Makes me sad that, like, Clarence spilled his guts, and, like, the necro killer's like, yep, he's insane, but not insane enough!
Look, I'm crazy, you're the wrong type of crazy. We need to switch that up a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's a great little juxtaposition when the crazy man is like, you're not well, are you?
Are you okay?
I always did enjoy those type of things where, like, clearly this unhinged individual's like,
Yeah. When
He's not all
Captain
there,
Jack
is he?
Sparrow is asking you if you're okay, there's a problem.
It's a unique problem to have.
Yes.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Ooh, insert. Hey, look, use this link to get these things. Look, it's a cool guy. You can stick in places. Okay, moving on.
That probably will stay if you can actually get that on your phone or whatever and scan it.
Oh,
that
it
will
does.
probably
If
be
you
on the
pause
store.
that,
Yeah.
It should be on the store.
Yeah.
And you
Hold
should
it a
be
little
able to
closer to the
access-
camera, Joe.
No, it's
Closer. Closer. Closer, closer, closer. Right there. To the right. There you go. They should be able to scan it now. You're good.
there you go. Yeah, and then you can get stickers and shirts and things that I have up there. Yeah. Ain't that neat?
Okay, so
I actually make money off of that, so please buy my stuff.
this is
It
all
doesn't go to
advertising
Any of
for
just at
Joe.
all. Just to me.
It doesn't go to me at all.
For just me.
That would be hilarious.
doesn't-
We just
it's
sell you
just
out
me.
of stickers. Make a Joe's like, this book thing's really working out for me. I'm like making
I'm
pennies
so
off
glad
of
that we got that
Spotify.
sick free sponsorship deal from me to me.
Okay, well, y'all have a great night. I think
I'll,
we're gonna end it
well,
here.
I'll have to make merch for. I have to make merch for you.
Yeah,
which
he's
I will
good.
do.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
you'll
can
make
do now.
merch and the
Now I
cover
can
of my
do.
book
Now
and
I
all
can do
that.
the
So
like the card idea. I can do like the card idea, and then do like the regular ones in the store, and then the like the holographic shiny ones we could do as the
yeah, for Patreon. Yeah.
deal.
So we got stuff in the works, and maybe it's out by now. Maybe it's not. I don't know. This is
Yeah,
podcast
maybe.
like
And maybe
5
it's a
or
completely
something.
different thing that
So,
different idea.
or we might come up with a better idea. We'll see.
Yeah.
But we're just making it up as
It's
we go.
been a long time.
Y'all have a good night.
Well,
What do we
and
say
are
now,
done
Joe?
yet?
Are we done yet?
Are we done yet?